All right, guys, here we are at AWC TV episode 7. This is actually taking off a little longer, a little further than what we originally planned. Today we've got Coach Don and Luke Kerns, who have been with us pretty much since the beginning. So I think it's a great opportunity to hear their experience early on in the club as they jumped on board with Ivan, and then how Luke went on to, ventured on through into the state finals his senior year. So I think we'll start with Coach Don. I know a little bit about your history, West Virginia, and at some point you wrestled Ken Chertow. You tell us when you got started in wrestling, about how old you were and where you were at.
Sure thing. My dad had been in the Army, but when he got out of the Army, we moved back to West Virginia, which was our home. And I was in 3rd grade at the time. And it was at that time that my dad actually helped to start up a wrestling club in my hometown of Ripley. My dad had wrestled in high school. In fact, he was part of the initial high school team that just started, back in the 60s when he was going to high school. And he was a part of that first team. But we'd not had youth wrestling in those 20 years in between until my dad helped to start it up. And so I was part of the fledgling club myself back in Ripley, West Virginia. And I basically grew up going through that along with a group of other guys. And we were together all the way through high school. And, it was rough at first. In fact, I remember, I think it was maybe my 4th grade year, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. So my first year, I don't even think I won a single match. That's how bad it was. I went as hard as I could, but I kept losing. These other boys, they seemed to already know how to wrestle, and I didn't. And it wasn't any fun. And so my dad let me take a year off, but I came back, decided to do it again, and stuck with it. I didn't have too much success through elementary school. I started getting a little better in middle school, but still not much success. However, a lot of my teammates were having a lot of success. I had several others that were doing really well, winning a lot of tournaments, and we were together every weekend. We were together several nights a week. But as I went on to high school, I just kept working at it. Did not start as a freshman. I was JV. But I just saw our wrestling team as we had a group who'd come up through youth wrestling going into high school. We stuck with it. And my class, we just kind of kept getting better all together. And by the time I was a senior, I was finding a lot more success, and so were my teammates. And we had one of the best classes that had gone through. Since then, they've eclipsed us as we've had others come in, new coaches and new kids, and the team has gone on to do really well in recent years there in Ripley, West Virginia.
That's great. So at what point did you wrestle Ken Chertow? Can you tell that story?
Sure. So as I was growing up, I wasn't able to go to any of the wrestling camps, anything like that. But my coach, he was always reaching out to local wrestlers and inviting them in. And there were 2 special experiences with that. One was with Ken Chertow. A lot of the younger kids may not know him, but he'd grown up not far from where we were in West Virginia. And he'd gone on to Penn State to wrestle and had a lot of success. And at this time, when I was in high school, I believe I was either a junior or senior, and he shows up for practice one day. He was at Penn State going to medical school, but he was taking a brief time off from medical school to train for the Olympics. And he was making the circuit around West Virginia to different high schools and colleges, finding any kids he could to wrestle. I remember that day he had ran like a half marathon, He'd already worked out for several hours, and he came that evening to wrestle with us. It really showed me what it takes to be successful. He was putting everything into training all the time. As I wrestled with him in practice, I got to wrestle him quite a bit of that practice, about half that practice. He was going like you wouldn't believe, so fast, so hard, very aggressive. He weighed about 15, 20 pounds less than me at least. He was in the lowest weight class in college and all, but he was going really hard. And every time he would just, right on a whistle, he'd take me down so fast. And he was just so aggressive. I was just struggling to stay, keep going. But I'll never, my glory moment was the one time I took him down right to his back. And for that millisecond was my glory. But right away, when his back hit the mat, it was like he had a spring under him or an explosion or something. He started flopping around underneath me and kind of threw me off and got up, and he took me down just one time after another. He was so mad at himself that he'd let this high schooler take him down onto his back for a second, but it was a fluke.
That's a pretty cool memory to have.
It is. The other cool one with our high school is we had the U.S. team that were disabled. I forget the exact name of it, but we had several wrestlers come in and practice with us one time that were blind or deaf, and that was something too. They were so good, but I really enjoyed and remember that practice as well, and that helped us to get better and to want to strive to be better.
For sure. Now, Luke, you were about third grade when you started, right?
Yeah. Just when he's saying it now, it's kind of funny how similar a lot of the things that he went through that I went through too, because I'm about the same age when, my dad was one of the starters of the wrestling club. I wasn't very good at it at the beginning. I wasn't that good through elementary and even middle school. I chose to take a year off like he did in 5th grade, but I came back because wrestling's just a great sport, and I just missed it a lot when I left. So
You guys came on, I think, year 1, right?
yeah.
It was you guys and the Caskies and
That's right, and Ivan, of course. So we moved to Tennessee that year that Luke was in 3rd grade. And up to that point, they didn't really have hardly any youth wrestling in North Carolina where we were. But when we moved to Tennessee, this area, it was in the late summer. And I'd already told my wife, I hope we can find a club and go ahead and let Luke give that a try. And so we did. I can't even remember for the life of me how I first met Ivan or knew about this, but someone told me that, hey, there's this guy, Ivan Pagan, that is looking to start up a new wrestling club for the youth. And somehow I got in touch with Ivan. I met him at the, I believe this is the Common Ground Coffee House here in Arlington. It's been gone for several years, but we met there and had a discussion, and Ivan laid out his vision, what he was trying to do. And I thought, well, this is perfect. And as I mentioned, my dad had done the same thing when I was that same age. And it perfectly mirrored my own experience. But Ivan made it clear that he had some very particular ways that he wanted to start the club and values. And I offered to help, and he sort of gave me well, we'll see.
Right. Yeah. That's how Matt tells it too.
But I said, whatever you need, I'll be a good soldier. I'm here. Just let me know. And once a team actually did form, it coalesced that fall. I was there every time and just kind of hung out and did whatever Ivan asked me to do. And he started to give me and Matt a little bit more and more. And we began to actually take on part of running the group. And of course, it didn't take long before we realized we needed to split the group into a couple different ability levels and age groups and such. And we did that for a few years before we ended up going to even a third group with the younger children and all.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a similar story where when I moved here, I think it was maybe the club's second or third year, I had to talk Ivan into bringing the little kids on. That's when Aiden was 4, I think. Yeah. So what do you guys remember about the early days of practice? And you remember back that far, Luke?
Yeah, it's kind of hard, but I remember that at first I really didn't like it.
Okay.
I liked a lot of the people there, and I like to learn new moves. But as soon as we went live, I just didn't know what I was doing, and I just felt helpless a lot. And so like I didn't like that part of practice. And as soon as that part of practice started going, I just didn't want anything to do with it at all. It's kind of funny because now live's my favorite part of practice, but.
Yes, I guess what I remember is it was difficult to teach these kids because no one in the room, none of the kids knew what they were doing, and it's a lot easier to learn when you have other people that you're wrestling with that know how to wrestle, and they can start to show you and teach you and all. But when no one knows, no one in the club knew how to wrestle other than the coaches, it made it a little slower. But at the same time, everyone was on the same level. No one was any good. And so we were teaching the very basics of movement and positions and scoring and all. And so that was kind of neat to see the kids progress. Of course, the first few years, we didn't have much success at the tournaments and matches, but you could see the kids getting better and better all the time. And you could see their confidence begin to grow over those early years.
Sure. What was it? So when you came on board, Don, what was it you hoped to impact on the club? What was it you hoped to have an impact on?
Yes. Well, mainly I just wanted to help Ivan because I knew the value of what he was doing. His vision was we need a youth program so that kids can actually be in the sport long enough to understand it, to get good at it, and to find success at the high school level. Mm-hmm. And I knew that to be true from my own experience. And I knew that if Luke were to enjoy wrestling, he would enjoy it a lot more in high school if he actually had a good foundation going into it. So that was a primary sort of goal. But personally, and I think that Ivan and Matt were on the same page as I was, I find wrestling to be just the best sport, a wonderful sport for teaching a lot of character and a lot of life lessons. I've done some hard things in life, and I think it's my foundation in wrestling that has helped me to get through those difficult times. And I wanted to be able to give that gift to these young men that through sticking it out on the mat, through getting up after you've been pinned or feel that you've been humiliated in a match, but getting back up and going back in the next week and practicing hard and coming back and trying again the next week. That's something that I just think, I don't know any other sport that teaches the lessons as well as wrestling that you need to make it through life.
For sure. So we fast forward to middle school. So you had some tough elementary school years, Luke. You end up one of the better guys in the state. I still remember that 8th grade match with that controversial push out. That still haunts me today.
I remember that.
Yeah, I still disagree with the call. How do you bounce back from that? What was your mindset after you went through that and how did that help you? How did that help catapult you to big success in high school?
It's just kind of a lesson you learn from wrestling. The sport itself is a very humbling sport in that not everything goes your way, and there will be calls that you don't agree with. But I mean, kind of one of the things that Simpson has taught us is you shouldn't even be in that position in the first place. That if you wrestled the right way, then the match wouldn't have to be decided on a call like that.
Right.
So it's just something that you learn that in wrestling you're going to get humiliated, you're going to get pinned, you're going to lose a lot, but it's how you bounce back from that translates to the rest of your life and into high school. I just kind of put that match in my memory bank and just kind of used it as fuel for preparing for high school.
That's good. And then when you're in high school, I know especially when you were a junior and a senior, I don't think anybody ever beat you in the third period.
No. I do have to.
Everybody knew that once it went to the third period, that was it.
I do have to attribute some cross country and track into that, but that was one of the main things I worked on because I was never one of the most technical. I was never one of the most fast. I was pretty strong for my size, but I mean, the main thing that I knew I could control was my pace and how fast I could wrestle. And I wanted to make sure that I could wrestle as hard as I could the whole period. So even though I was training for cross country and stuff, I still kept in the back of my head, this will help me in wrestling too. So, and when we did sprints for wrestling, did all those stairs and stuff, I always was like, my opponents aren't going to be doing this in the third period. So it's just something you keep in mind. And it definitely translated to success at the state tournament for sure.
You know, the thing that I most, I guess, want to impress on the kids is not to give up. And that's, I guess, one of the key lessons that wrestling teaches you is to just keep going, keep trying, don't give up. It's the only sport I know that you can be losing by lots of points down to the last second and still win. You can still pin your opponent with 1 second left, no matter how bad you've been doing up to that point. You still had the opportunity to make a comeback. And wrestling's great for that, teaching the perseverance. And so, yes, you can get down like Luke did in the first or second period, but if you have the training, if you have the endurance, the will, you can come back from that. You don't need to give up ever in wrestling. And you have a bad season, a bad year or two, which happens, especially early on. Don't give up. You can just keep working at it. And I find that the kids that stick with it, they will keep getting better. And the longer they stick with it and try hard, they're going to come out in a good place. By the time they graduate high school, they can be proud of what they've learned. They can have a lot of self-confidence that they can take out into the world that, hey, I could stick with it. I can make it through all this. I can handle anything.
Yeah, for sure. I know Tremaine's kids are really big in the track as well. So I'm hearing is that the multi-sport really kind of gave you an advantage.
Yeah. I think that, I think that it definitely translates a lot. I think all the kids who just do just straight folk style during wrestling season are just kind of like one-dimensional. I think that you should be doing at least another sport. I did track and cross country, but a bunch of people did freestyle over the summer, did Greco too, and I kind of sad that I didn't get to do that a lot. But I still think that cross country and track definitely helped me with especially my gas tank and persevering through matches.
Some of the summers you would run for cross country and you would still kind of squeeze in a lift with the high school, with the rest of the team, is that right?
It was a balancing act.
Yeah.
because the seasons would overlap a little bit. So during cross country season, I mean, the schedule was go to school, right after school, run cross country. So we probably run around 6 miles or so. And then right after that, just drive straight to wrestling practice where they're normally in the middle of a workout. And so I'd have to kind of go on my own and catch up with what they're doing. And I'd be there later than everybody else because they'd finish before me. But I'd always get my workouts in. I always get my lifts in and finish those. It's just how much you're willing to work. Yeah, I definitely think that if I kind of had the lazy mindset of after cross country, I'm like, I got enough of a workout. I'm just going to go home. I definitely don't think I would have done as well as I would have.
You still got all the homework done?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a grind. You had homework after that too, especially with taking a couple AP classes. So it was rough, but it definitely, I definitely am confident that I won't face anything nearly as hard as that for the rest of my life.
You're probably right. So, a lot of kids, it's easier to, it's easy to take the easy road, right? So what motivated you to keep doing that for, the last couple of years?
It's just kind of a mindset you kind of learned. Simpson kind of helped instill in us too that if you keep working, that your work will pay dividends later, even if you can't see it now. And it was hard to see, especially freshman and sophomore year, where I would put all that work in and I would still have like limited success. I went out in the second and third rounds my freshman and sophomore year, and especially my sophomore year was a heartbreaker because I had a lot more expectations for myself, and I lost the match at state in my sophomore year to last second takedown. I was devastated, but it's just something you got to learn to keep pushing through.
Okay. So you do all that work, you put in all the effort, you had some disappointments, you keep coming back. Your senior year, did you think you were going to make state finals?
No, that was, I mean, it was, I think it's a surprise to a lot of us. I didn't even expect it out myself. I had confidence that I would place. That was my goal, but I never thought I'd make it that far. But it's just the dividends of all the work I had put in finally paid off in that tournament. And I was able to beat guys I didn't think I was able to beat. I wasn't even ranked at all my senior year, even going into the state tournament. I wasn't on any of the lists, but I beat some of the guys that were up there and had a heck of a run. And I ended up making the state finals, ended up losing by 2 points to Isabel, but still it just shows that the work you put in will eventually pay dividends.
Yeah. It was fun to watch.
Luke got progressively better, and that's what I really believe the kids that stick with it and work hard and put in the hours, they do get better and better. And Luke had been doing that. And, I told Luke, his sophomore and junior year, those years he was still making too many mistakes. But you could see the potential against difficult opponents, against some really good athletes. He was able to stand with them. It was his mistakes that were costing him and his lack of speed and intensity. But as he started to get his confidence up, by the time he went into his senior year, it was evident that Luke could stand toe to toe with most anyone. There's only a couple wrestlers that he faced that were really at another level than he was. But and so going into that state tournament, I fully believed that he could be in the finals because I had seen him stand toe to toe with opponents as good as all of them that he was going to face in that state tournament.
Right. So you have so you go from middle school coach, now he's at the high school. how was that transition for you guys? Did you flip the switch from coach to dad? I know I've heard about some impromptu matches at home, but how was that
We still
transition?
have those. But no, yes, I did switch from a coach to dad pretty much. So I let Coach Simpson coach him. Occasionally I would offer some feedback, but I also didn't want to be the kind of dad that was um, always writing him and telling him you should do this or that. I'm sure at times I did, but I tried to hold back and just be his cheerleader, encourage him when he was down or had a tough time as much as possible. And when he is open to it, I try to give him some technical advice or some advice on strategy, things he could try to work on to improve his matches.
About
You
you,
can
Luke?
tell me what the real answer is.
No, yeah, I think you did it the right way. It was you definitely helped me through some of those tough matches, uh, with the especially the losses. Kind of just helped me through those, but it's definitely transition like that.
It was at that time that I stepped away from the youth wrestling club just to spend the time watching Luke and taking him to different matches and tournaments and such. So I was sad to kind of step away from the youth wrestling. I really enjoyed the coaching through the years, but I'm glad I was able to spend that time with Luke.
Yeah, for sure. So who do you guys look up to? Who in the wrestling celebrity world do you guys look for guidance, or do you follow?
I'll let Luke answer that one. He follows a lot of guys.
I don't know. There's a lot of I guess college wrestlers that I kind of liked and looked up to. I really liked Jason Knopf.
Okay.
He's a bad man. He just kind of embodies the attitude of I'm gonna wrestle you hard for 6 minutes, or I guess in their case 7 minutes straight, and I'm not gonna let off. And I mean, Jason wasn't like a spectacular athlete either. He wasn't like the biggest or strongest dude, but he just went out there and just he had the mindset I'm gonna beat my opponents, and there's nothing they're gonna do about it. And he just went and won those NCAA titles. So
For sure.
I don't follow the college wrestling much. I'll watch it with Luke occasionally, but you know, the wrestlers I really look up to the most are those kids that have struggled and they stick with it and keep going hard and giving it all they got and keep getting better. You know, and I look up to like with Luke's graduating class. Ended up being a wonderful class. They had grown up wrestling together, many of them. You know, Austin and just four of you had four of you had wrestled all through youth
Yeah.
wrestling together. But one I really admire though a lot was Justin. So Justin hadn't had youth wrestling, and he just started in high school, and he had to work really hard to catch up. But you know, I just love to see kids that are willing to put the hard work in, not make excuses, overcome adversity, and keep going out there every week and wrestling hard. I admire anyone that can stick with wrestling.
honestly, I think the wrestling world here was lucky that he didn't start when we did, because I think he would have been a force to reckon with if he did.
Yeah, he was a hard worker. Another dual sport athlete.
Yeah.
So what advice would you guys have for anybody preparing for high school? So any middle school wrestler, what would you say to them if you could go back and do anything over again? What kind of advice would you give yourself going into high school?
I just think that you need to always put 100% effort into the workouts and just kind of practices you do. I mean, sometimes you may think like, what's this going to do to help me, or why do I need to put effort into this? And just some of the little things that coach tells you. But like I said, with how my state tournament went. The work you put in will pay dividends. And also, I think that finding partners to wrestle, always try to find the toughest partner. I think one of the main things that also helped me leading up to state was it was after Justin got hurt, and for those 2 weeks before state, my wrestling partner was Reed for that straight 2 weeks, and he beat the crap out of me for like 2 weeks straight. But it definitely helped me be a better wrestler coming up to state.
I'd say for any kid going from middle school to high school, well, a lot of them, if they've been doing it for a while, are doing pretty good in middle school and finding a decent amount of success there. I'd say humility is the key for those kids. As you go into high school, you go from towards the top of the pack to the bottom once again, in most cases. And you may go to being JV. That's what I experienced going into high school. I wasn't even able to wrestle on varsity, and that happens. So it just takes some humility. I've seen, 7th, 8th graders that have one or two moves that they're really good at, and they think they're just sort of invincible with those couple moves, and wins them a lot of matches. And I always try to encourage them, do other moves, work on your other moves, even if you don't win. Work on those, because guess what? Those two moves aren't going to get you through high school. And it takes some humility to step away from the things that you're really good at or trust, and to put work into other things. But it'll help you in the long term. You need to be a pretty well-rounded wrestler with a number of good moves in your toolbox as you go into high school.
Yeah, and I think even if you weren't at the top of the pack when you're coming in, I think just don't be discouraged, that you can still catch up. Like, I don't know if you guys know about Austin Ancliffe, but he was not good in middle school at all. He was, we make fun of him a lot for how bad he was in middle school, but he worked his butt off in high school, and he did freestyle wrestling all throughout the summer and stuff. And I mean, he's come out as arguably the best wrestler out of our class. I mean, he's wrestling in college right now. So
yeah, I don't think anybody was close to him his senior year.
yeah,
Even the state finals, Brooks just didn't have it that year.
No,
he broke Brooks.
No, he's clearly the best in the state. Excellent wrestler and still doing well in college.
Good kid. Jermaine, do you have something there?
Yes.
Sorry.
No problem. I like the way it was flowing there, so I didn't want to stop. I heard you talk a lot about the foundation, and could you elaborate on, how important that could be for a youth wrestler transitioning into high school?
Absolutely. Yes. Just knowing the basic moves, the single legs, the double legs, the basic breakdowns, and even just half Nelson. Kids get tired of doing these. Every season we start up and teach them again, and a lot of these kids are like, I already know how to do that. Well, you go around and look, and they know the basics, but they may not be doing it exactly perfect. They don't know the different variations of how to hit it or move from one move into that move. And but the kids in high school, Luke's takedown got him to the finals in states. He had to keep working, and his takedowns. He knew the basics. Yeah, back in 4th, 5th grade, he knew the basics of it, but he had to keep working on those takedowns and getting better and better till he could do it faster. He knew the right time to hit it. He knew the right mechanics to make it effective. And it wasn't until his into his junior year that Luke truly had a good takedown. It took him all those years to perfect it.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger things too that is a lot of people focus on the finishes, and that's really like all they focus on. But what's, in my opinion, even more important is the setup. One of the big things we focused on in high school that I didn't really think about or do much in middle school was the setups. So I think that's the thing that a lot of middle schoolers can work on, is the setups to a lot of the moves they like.
Yeah, good stuff. Speaking of, this question is for you, Luke. You did a lot of volunteering for the summer camps there. Are you gonna miss that?
Oh yeah, those are always fun. Yeah, it's a little chaotic at times, but it's always great to teach the kids new stuff, and it's really cool to see, like, especially like if you do it many years in a row, you can see how like you can see the same kids again next year and see kind of just the progress they've made since last year when you taught them. So that whole experience is kind of cool just to kind of help out with.
That's all I have. This is a great interview. Make the boys go back and watch it.
Yeah. What about a favorite quote? You guys have a favorite quote that you reflect on often?
Simpson had a lot of those. Yes.
There's something you can repeat on the
No pain, no gain.
Yeah. I think one of them he said was that success is rented and the rent is due every day. I think that was one of his quotes, but I think that's kind of what that's kind of one of the things I took to heart, and I made sure I tried to put in my rent every day. So
That's a good one.
I'd say I don't have many wrestling quotes that I live by, but I am a pastor, a Christian pastor, and one of the verses that is pretty popular, but I always got a lot out of, is that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and it gets back to that whole perseverance, sticking with it, and at the end of the day, my faith. It was always more important than how well I did on the mat that day, and that gave me a lot of strength to get up and to go on, knowing that there's more than just that mat. And I hope to instill that in the kids as they wrestle. Wrestling's wonderful, and I want them to experience success. But more important than that are those life lessons you can learn from the sport that you take with you.
That's a good one. What about you? You guys got any questions for us?
well,
No?
not that I can think of. What did you think of me as a little kid?
When you guys were on part of that blue team or the gold team, and I was running around chasing little kids.
Yeah.
I had that first year I had 2 kindergartners, a couple first graders and a few second graders. We had some that started having success, but towards the end of that season, it was herding cats.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember little Coy. So Aiden and Coy were the 2 kindergartners that year. And then he was helping me out. He was the chiropractor, who's honestly chiropractic before the current owner. And they moved back to Minnesota about halfway through the season. So he was kind of my help. So after that, it was just me and 12 kids, just trying to get them to learn the basics. It was frustrating at times, but when that season was over, we got an email from I forget the guy's name, Coy's dad, who thanked Ivan and I, for working with this kid. Coy actually went on to be a Minnesota state champ that year.
Wow.
So it was after that, I was like, wow, maybe we are onto something. We're just doing foundational stuff, but this kid went on to have some success. And I remember what I remember very little about you guys is the few times I worked with you guys, especially when you were in middle school. Isabel was the only one to maintain eye contact through anything we were talking about. And I think it was you, Luke, that your shoes were just too big for your body for a long time. That's not about right.
They definitely helped in high school, though. Good with legs.
I mean, you guys were a good group of kids, and you kept working. And think about, you mentioned Austin. Think about Aaron.
Mhm.
He didn't have a lot of success in middle school either. Now, he walked out of there a giant. I think he ended up taking third his senior year in states. I mean, he's another model of kids that didn't have success early on, but kept getting back up. So, that's probably a lot of that class. You guys kept getting back up, and you kept getting better, and that kind of, we still take that, keep getting better to heart. Right, every year we try and get a little bit better, and it's starting to pay off for a lot of kids. So you guys helped lay that foundation, that model.
Hey, Coach Kerns, you've been around
Yeah.
quite a while. So what do you think about, where you see the program now from when it first started?
I think it's awesome to see how the program has grown, the way that you're reaching out and bringing new kids into the sport every year. It's just the number of kids wrestling is tremendous, but the level of wrestling that you have going on is just so much higher than ever before, and it's showing in the success you've been experiencing. I'm very proud of the club and where it's at. I remember our first few years, we would go to a tournament and there would be like the Wave Club from Christian Brothers. They'd have like 50 kids running around on mats, and here we were with a dozen or whatever, and I thought, wow, and they were on such a different level than we were in competitions, and I feel we're there now, that we are at the same level that Wave Club was 10 years ago when we started all this. So I'm very proud of the program, and I think you're doing a wonderful job as you all lead this and keep taking it to higher levels.
I appreciate that. That might be it. Do you guys have anything else? Anything else you don't want to get to say, or you want to instill upon our youth or our audience?
They probably had enough from us, but I enjoyed this, and thank you, and blessings to the club and to all the young boys and girls. One of the ones that started off pretty early on with us was Isabel Badon, and there's an example of someone. She did not win a point in practice, hardly ever. She would do the moves. She would get taken down, pinned over and over again in practice. And I thought, I felt bad for her. But she'd come out and she'd be smiling and happy and lace up her shoes and go at it again. And, I thought, too bad that she can't experience a little bit of success. Well, as you know, she went on to win the state championship in Tennessee time and time again, and now, 4-time state champion, and is now wrestling in college. It's wonderful to see people like Isabel and what she's done, or Bella, as we called her.
Yeah. I think she still wears her Arlington Wrestling Club sweatshirt every now and then. I still see pictures of her on.
And the bonds you form with your teammates are really important. So I know that she would come over and watch Luke wrestle his matches and vice versa, because they'd wrestled way back in youth wrestling. That they have that connection with one another.
And you both got to be in the state finals together that last year of high school.
Yeah, that was a pretty special experience.
That is pretty cool. We definitely appreciate the comments, and Coach Don and Luke, I really appreciate you guys coming on and doing this thing with us. That's all I got. I appreciate you guys and all your impact, and hope you guys will come back and help out every now and then as the club continues to grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, definitely for the summer camp, Luke, we need you.
That's right.
Well, he'll be around if you get to do the camp this summer.
Yeah, we'll make a decision later on this summer. I think June might be too soon.
Yes. All right. You all take care.
Thank you, guys.